Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled homeowner association busybody tries to steal the land of an old farmer and tries everything they could to break the will of this man. They insist that he must at least sell his land, else they will destroy him. The farmer ends up fighting back, and we find out why you should never mess with a farmer. The title story starts like this. Now, I have been farming on this land for a long time, working hard while the little minions of the HOA were still in diapers. I had a tough childhood, but it raised me to be hardworking and take no crap from anybody. So when the HOA turned its gaze on trying to steal my livelihood, I put up the fight of my life. They expected me to be an ordinary old man they could push around and take advantage of, but well, I made sure they never bothered anyone like me again. So the story is, my family has lived on this land for generations, long since my grandfather first started the farm after he returned from the war. For many decades since its establishment, this farm has stood isolated with the next town some 20 miles away, not that I minded. Then about 15 years ago, some HOA people began to snoop around here. They said they were gonna be building new homes out here. I threw them off my land and reported them for trespassing, but my concerns were overlooked as they were supposedly an official government business. I grumbled and complained, but they returned every time I threw them out like persistent roaches. They seriously kept coming back anyway, and the new neighborhoods rose up around me. With each year, the neighborhood grew until it connected my farm to the town, renaming my rural area to New Salem. Anyway, after that, the building slowed down and I had hoped we had seen the end of it, and I could go back to what peace and isolation I had left before. Shortly after things settled down, I got an unexpected visit from a couple of suits, and they introduced themselves as lawyers for the HOA managing the suburbs. One guy, Max, did most of the talking while the others sat uncomfortably like they were scared to talk out of line. He came off as a real jackass, the kind of guy you would meet in Vegas selling miracle skin cream or some other rubbish. I have dealt with my share of indecent folks in my day, so I knew immediately when they were adding on forced politeness because they wanted something, building favor before a hard sell. From a pocket in his jacket, Max took out a small paper slip and handed it to me with a crooked smile and no explanation. Unfolding it revealed a check for $10,000 from the HOA to me. I asked him plainly what this was for, and from his suppressed annoyance I guessed he was expecting a little more shock or wonder from the old guy, and then I gave up. He curtly explained that the HOA wanted to make an offer to buy me out and expand their neighborhood. The sum was to be exchanged for the deeds to the farm and its surrounding land. A modest sum, they said, for what they could see it to be, but all they saw were fields and a barn. To me, this place was my home and my most prized possession. I handed back the check without needing to give it any thought, but he would not accept it. He left shortly after, dutiful minions following behind him as he waved off my complaints, telling me to think it over better and to consider my nearing retirement. What a cheeky brat. The next evening I got a call. It was from an HOA lawyer asking my decision on the offer. I said I was still thinking it over, hanging up on them as they began to recite what I expected was a very well-rehearsed sales pitch. So then this occurred again and again, either calling in the very early morning or late at night, as if trying to wear me down into submitting to their request. After the third call, I got sick of repeating myself and ripped out the phone line. See how they like it now. About 4 or 5 days passed of peaceful quiet, and I began to forget about the whole ordeal, assuming they had too finally gotten the hint. Instead, I found that they had resorted to old-fashioned mail, sending me piles of junk letters and the same boring documents. Despite my reluctance and their persistence, I noticed the sum they first offered had not changed. They could not have wanted my farm too badly if they were relying on harassment as their main negotiator. 3 weeks worth of shredded envelope paper later, the mail abruptly stopped, and I wondered what trick they would try next. It turns out they would be much more direct in their next approach when I saw their car waiting for me to return home from a trip. The HOA lawyer stepped out of their corporate-issued black vehicle to greet me, or more likely to get their foot in the door before I could refuse them entry. All the falseness Max displayed on our first meeting had now vanished from his character. He now appeared silent and serious, all business today. I tried to shrug them off with fake excuses of why I could not let them in, but Max quick-wittedly had an answer to everything and eventually wormed his way into my living room for the second time. We sat opposite each other in armchairs in total silence, as if locked in an intense and unspoken challenge of willpower and stubbornness, waiting for the other to crack first by uttering their demands. Annoyed by their behavior as guests or invaders, I spoke up first to ask them to be quick. In doing so, Max retaliated with a manila envelope. As I unfurled its contents, Max explained that after a routine inspection of the farm and lands, they found it to have breached many HOA regulations, resulting in immediate and dire action. The first page of the document had "lawsuit" in an ominous red font. I was so focused and shocked on reading the papers that I had not noticed the lawyers had seen themselves out. In their terms, the HOA had stated that if I were to give up the deeds to the farm, they would drop the charges, which made me even more suspicious as to the truth or legality of what they were threatening me with. Storming out after them, I drove back into town and stopped in at the offices of a nearby lawyer my family had worked with before. I waited to see them through their busy schedule, and after explaining my case in very colorful and detailed language, they were immediately on board to sorting this mess out. 2 days of digging later, my lawyer got back to me with some very positive news. The so-called routine inspection the HOA had conducted on my farm actually needed my consent and presence to make it official. The fact they had sprung this on me later made it not only illegal but trespassing and forgery as well. With enough evidence to stand on, I drew up my own lawsuit to counter theirs, dropping it off personally to the nearest mailbox. As the trial date loomed closer, the HOA board attempted to reach out to me again and reconcile any misunderstandings, as they put it, but to me it just sounded like they were trying to cover their asses. With everything they put me through this past year and with everything they threatened to do, there was no way I was about to roll over and spare them now. My family lawyer urged me to settle early, not confident on our odds against their team of suits. Through sheer spite and stubbornness on my part, I refused to withdraw my challenge and I stood my ground despite everything I stood to lose. The battle of court seemed lost on me, but from my lawyer's sudden change of heart, I took it as a positive sign. 2 stressful months later, I walked out of the courthouse with a $20,000 check paid by the HOA in harassment, blackmail, and emotional damages. The HOA board escaped judgment, passing off all blame onto their head lawyer Max as a scapegoat who got disbarred with a year in jail. Not that I felt sorry for any of them, at least, and now the HOA knows not to mess with me anymore. If they want land for a new neighborhood, they better look elsewhere. And now an update to the story. It had been a year since the HOA board made their first offer to buy my farm, and the situation only got worse. They had tried every tactic in the book, from harassing phone calls to legal threats to sending thugs to my property with weapons once again. Every time they tried something new, I would call the police or hire a lawyer to fend them off, but they wouldn't give up so easily. I had thought that winning the court case would have been enough to discourage them, but it only made them more determined. As the months went by, the HOA board's tactics became more aggressive. They would send people to my farm in the middle of the night, leaving threatening messages and vandalizing my property. They would follow me around town, making sure I knew that they were watching my every move. They even went as far as to put up posters around the town, accusing me of being a criminal and urging people to stay away from me. But I was not gonna let them win. I knew that if I gave up my land, it would only embolden them to go after other farmers in the area. I also knew that if I stood my ground, I would be setting an example for others who might face similar situations, so I decided to fight back. One night, as I was coming home from a town meeting, I noticed a group of people loitering outside my property. As I got closer, I recognized them as members of the HOA board. They had bats and knives and they looked ready to cause trouble. I knew I had to act fast, so I grabbed my shotgun and stood my ground. The situation quickly escalated into a standoff, with the HOA board members taunting me and trying to intimidate me. I stood my ground, keeping my shotgun pointed at them, and tried to reason with them. However, they were not interested in talking. They just wanted to get their hands on my land. That is when I decided to call the police. I knew that the situation was getting out of hand and I needed help. Within minutes, the police arrived on the scene and defused the situation. The HOA board members were arrested for trespassing and assault, and I was finally able to get some peace. If you are asking why they were arrested, they were essentially threatening to slit my throat if I don't hand over my land, and one of them had a massive machete. However, that was not the end of it. I knew that the HOA board was not gonna stop there. They had proven themselves to be ruthless and determined, and I knew that I had to be prepared for whatever they threw at me next. So I worked with my lawyer to build a case against the HOA board for their violent behavior and attempts to steal my property. We gathered evidence, talked to witnesses, and made sure that we had a strong case. We were able to secure convictions for all of the board members who were involved in the attack, and they were all sentenced to jail time. But that was not enough. I wanted to make sure that the HOA board would never be able to harm anyone else in the community ever again. So then I rallied the community and we worked together to completely restructure the HOA. We put new regulations in place to prevent any future abuse of power, and we made sure that the members of the HOA were accountable to the community they served. We also set up a system of checks and balances to ensure that no one person had too much power within the organization. It was a long and difficult process, but it was worth it. Looking back, I cannot believe I was able to stand up to the HOA board and win. It was not easy, but I was able to persevere thanks to the support of my family and community. And now my farm is safe from their grasp and I can continue to work the land that my family has owned for generations. And the next one is titled, You Forgot the Food. 10 years ago or so, I was camping with friends outside Fruita, CO. The day after a long night of drinking and bad sleep, I was trying to grab a nap in my tent. A friend of mine thought it would be funny to throw a leftover burrito from previous night's dinner at my tent repeatedly, giggling every time I cursed him for doing it. Finally, I had to give up on the nap and got the hair of the dog root instead. The next day the trip was over and we all headed home. Cue my petty revenge. While my friend was not looking, I placed said burrito quietly in his glove box. Now, you gotta understand, this was the middle of summer. The friend lives in Denver, where daytime highs in the 90s are normal. 2 weeks later, I get a call from my friend who, after cleaning his entire car and looking for dead animals in his engine, finally opened his glove box to foulness I cannot imagine. And the best part is, the second he saw it, he knew who put it there and that he deserved the hell out of it. Sometimes revenge is best served hot and fetid. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. Was I the jerk to my neighbor? I am 30 female and not gonna go into detail, but my nephew Luke, 10 years old, has very angry and aggressive behavior. I know what's going on with him and I am working on it. I got custody of my nephew and I know I said we are working on it, but it's really hard. So I love him to bits, but I think I've cried more in this past year than I ever have before. My neighbor is convinced that I have to be more strict and discipline him better. However, that's really not the case, but I simply tell her that I will keep her advice in my mind and try to avoid her. But yesterday was one of the harder days and I had confiscated one of my nephew's toys until he calmed down. It was a superhero action figure. I went out on my porch for a breather while he napped and I didn't realize, but I had brought the toy out with me. I was sitting on the steps and the toy was next to me. Then my neighbor pops out of nowhere and after telling me that the kid needs more discipline for the 100th time, she grabbed the toy. I was confused and asked if I could have it back. She told me that he and I will be better off without it. After all, actions have consequences. I told her that I don't care and I would like for her to give the toy back. She patted me on the shoulder and said she knows it's hard, but it will work out in the end, and was gonna walk away with it, but I ended up yelling at her. I said, "Oh my god, give it back or else I'll call the police and tell them that you, a 60-year-old something lady, stole from a little kid." She gasped and was all like, "I'm not 60-something, I'm still in my 40s. Keep in mind, she still has the toy. I just went, "You look 60 to me." I kid you not, this woman starts crying, and after giving, aka throwing the toy back, she called me incredibly rude and ran into her house. Her partner called me later to apologize, but asked if I could apologize as well, since what I said was pretty rude. I told them I would think about it. Now I'm wondering if I am the a-hole for how I reacted. I did exaggerate her age to insult her, which was pretty mean of me, but she literally stole the toy and refused to give it back until I did. Am I the jerk here? And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would love to hear from you. Do you think that OP is the jerk in this situation or not? Let me know in the comments. Comment number 1 said, not the a-hole. What kind of a grown woman tries to steal a child's toy? The A-kind, that's who. Honestly, keep doing what you're doing. Luke might not appreciate it at the time, but as an adult he probably will be able to look back and be thankful for you. Comment number 2, screw her, not the a-hole. You obviously don't owe her a damn thing. Tell her to stay the hell out of your business and don't speak to her anymore. Neighbor demands I give her my driveway. This just happened. I was having a great morning with my wife and kids when my neighbor texted me. We have never spoken in the 6 to 7 years that we have lived here, and she has always given me and my family dirty looks. This never bothered me, but it always bothered my wife. We never knew why she did this, but today we found out. Side note, her husband seems like a decent guy who just acts like he is defeated by his wife. The few times that I have spoken to him, the conversation has always gotten cut short because his wife needed him for something. My house has a very long driveway. The driveway leads up a hill to my house at the top. The bottom quarter of the driveway is shared by my 2 neighbors. They have to drive up it to get into their garages. My side yard overlooks one neighbor's backyard, while my backyard overlooks the other's backyard. My pool is in my backyard. I am posting the text conversation that just took place. Hey OP, this is your neighbor. I'm putting in a ground pool into my backyard and I had some paperwork drawn up for you to sign. Can you stop by my place tonight at 8 PM? Hello? I'm a busy woman and I need to know that you are coming tonight. Me? Who is this? I told you I'm your neighbor. I just need you to stop by to sign the paperwork. It should take less than a minute. What paperwork? What are you talking about? I'm having a pool built in my backyard and I need you to sign some paperwork. The worker said that he couldn't build it in ground because of your driveway or something like that. What does my driveway have to do with anything? If you want to build a pool, go ahead, I don't care. Great, so I will see you at 8 PM to sign the paperwork. No, you are not. I'm not signing any paperwork. I don't know what it is for, and to be honest, I don't really care. I've lived here for 2 years, you have never said more than 2 words to me, and now you want me to sign some papers? Not gonna happen. Also, what does my driveway have to do with your pool? Don't be selfish. You have a pool with a waterfall for your kids, but you don't want me to have a pool for mine? Stop being a selfish prick. I will see you at 8. What the F? Who even are you? I'm done with this conversation. Goodbye. I don't think so. I need your driveway to build my pool. Why do you need such a big driveway anyway? You can park on the street and walk up to your house. Stop being selfish. I need this pool for my kids. Wait, are you seriously asking me to sign away my driveway? What the actual F is wrong with you? Like I said, you don't need such a big driveway. You're being selfish and wasteful. You can park on the street and walk. It's not a big deal. Lady, you are crazy. I don't even know you. Regardless, did you really think I was going to sign papers a stranger hands to me without reading them? Don't you dare call me crazy. And we are not strangers, we are neighbors. How did you even get my number? You have my husband's business card. Don't try to change the subject. You will sign the papers or I will sue you. Ha! What is so funny? Ha ha ha. Stop it now. And I just continued laughing. You will regret this. Are you the neighbor who keeps stealing my Amazon packages? I never stole anything in my life. Well, I have 2 neighbors. I know the ones that I like pretty well, so I think it is safe to assume that you are the crazy lady who has never said a word to me. And yeah, you've been stealing my packages. F off. Don't you dare to speak to me that way. Do you know who my husband is? Do you know what he can do to you? If someone delivers a package to my house, then legally it is mine. That's not stealing. No, you're wrong, and your husband seems like a nice guy. I don't think he would like that you're demanding that I give you my driveway so you can build a pool. You don't need your driveway. Stop being a selfish piece of crap. If you don't sign, I will end you. Yeah, no. What? Yes or no? I will give you a hint. 2 letters. N-O. Okay, I'm calling the cops. Goodbye. You're calling the cops? I'm going to call them first and they are going to side with me because I did nothing wrong and you're a piece of work. Okay, call them and let them sort this out. I already did. They are going to make you sign and I'm not only going to take your driveway, I'm also going to take your house. You and your kids will be homeless. You effed with the wrong person. Wow, real classy, Karen. My name is not Karen. What kind of idiot are you? Answer me now. Basically, she wants me to give her my driveway so she can build an in-ground pool for her kids. Her kids are a nightmare and she has never controlled them. She just lets them run around and do whatever they want all day. I still don't fully understand why she needs the rights to my driveway to do that, but she didn't like being told no. If I'm being honest, I did get angry and a little immature during the conversation, but I felt it was warranted for the situation. She thought that threatening and making racist comments about my kids would be the best way to get me to do what she wants. My kids are half Korean, half European. Update, so I went out with my family earlier today, and when we got home she had blocked off our driveway with traffic cones. I moved them over to block her garage and texted her to let her know, here is the conversation. Update 2, she says that she's going to build her pool with or without my signature and that I should sign. In the end, she says to do the right thing and calls me a witch, but I wasn't sure how appropriate that is for SoundCloud, so I edited it out. You guys all have some great advice about how to handle this situation, but I haven't decided what to do yet. I don't want to escalate too much because my family has to live right near her. I also feel like I can't do nothing because it will only get worse. I will let you guys know once I decide how to handle this. Update, entitled mom demands I give her my driveway. A lot of people have been asking me for an update and I don't think it is realistic to answer all of your messages individually, so here it goes. I honestly didn't take my neighbor seriously and that was a mistake. I stayed home from work on 1st March to make sure that my neighbor didn't try anything. The day was completely normal, so I went to work the next day, and when I was pulling down my driveway, there were trucks from a pool company on the street in front of her house. I immediately regretted not taking this situation seriously, but I had to go to work, so I left and called my wife asking her to keep an eye out. About 2 hours later, my wife called telling me that the trucks had pulled onto our driveway and a few guys had started removing the hedges that line my driveway. To give you guys an idea of what my driveway looks like, there are hedges that line the driveway all the way up to my house, which then branch out to the right and left, although they aren't the only thing separating my property from my neighbors. In my previous post, I mentioned that my house is on a hill, my neighbors' houses are lower than mine, so their backyards are lower than mine. If you were to stand on my driveway looking at my neighbor's backyard, you would be looking at a 4 to 5 foot drop. The guys were removing the hedges for easier access to my neighbor's backyard. I immediately left work and headed home. When I got there, I explained to the contractors that I had not given permission to alter my property in any way. They told me to call their office, which I did. Unfortunately, my neighbor came outside while I was on the phone with them, screaming at the guys to continue what they were doing, telling them that she owned my driveway. She started screaming in my face, telling me that I was a scumbag and that her kids needed an in-ground pool. Why should my kids have a nice pool and not her kids? Nothing she said made any real sense. I didn't really know what to say, so I just kind of stared at her while she was screaming at me. I was still on hold with the pool company anyway. She then told me that my wife's sister had told her that it was okay for her to cut down my hedges and that was all the permission she needed. My wife is one of 5 siblings, 3 girls and 2 boys. I am really close with her brothers, but not with her sisters. They have always been weird to me. The oldest sister straight up called me a damn gook once a few years back. To be honest, we were in a pretty heated argument, and the younger sister was never openly hostile towards me, but has been mooching off of me for the last 10 years and flips out on my wife if we ever say no to her. I really didn't know what to say to my neighbor at this point, so I just walked up to my house to speak to my wife. After my wife spoke to her sisters, we found out that my sister-in-law, younger, has been speaking to my neighbor for the last year. She claims that she mentioned to her how the city had used eminent domain to take some of my property a few years back, but nothing more than that. I guess my neighbor thought this meant that anyone could take my property. Still not following the logic here. So yeah, this situation is completely bonkers. I'm putting a fence around my property now, which I really don't want to do. The pool guys assured me that they wouldn't be returning, but my neighbor is absolutely crazy and I'm wondering what she has planned next. Wife and I were talking about moving across the country to get away from her sisters, but we didn't want to leave my mom and brother. My kids love them. I guess my neighbor made our minds up for us, so we will be moving away ASAP. Edit, the general consensus seems to be that I should speak to a lawyer and the police. I'm taking the day off to speak to a lawyer tomorrow. Also, a lot of comments about what is going to happen when I sell the house. I'm going to speak to my wife about it when I get home tonight, but I don't think I'm gonna sell the house. Hopefully, I can put this house up for rent. Edit number 2, I met with a lawyer this morning. She spoke a lot, but it doesn't seem like she can do much. I did call the police though. When I got home earlier today, the glass on my front door was cracked and one of my basement windows was shattered. I checked my cameras and my neighbor was knocking on my door for a few minutes before kicking in my front door repeatedly. After she cracked the glass, she walked around to the back of my house and kicked in my basement window before running away. I called the police and they were here in less than 5 minutes. I gave them the footage and they went to knock on her door. I was told that I would be able to get a restraining order. I will post an update when I find out what is going to happen to her. We are still going to move, but we are most likely going to sell the house. My wife just wants to forget this place exists and I don't disagree. And guys, unfortunately I have to tell you, this is the last update to the story, at least so far, and that just leads me to believe that OP and his wife indeed just forgot that this place really existed and simply moved on with their lives. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, then please don't forget to check out my endless playlist, which has thousands of videos and hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.